Hello, welcome to Just the Dis. My name is Brian, and we talk about Blu-rays here. And today I am talking about some recent releases from the good folks at Indicator / Powerhouse in the UK, a company and a label that I am a huge fan of. And one of these sets we'll be talking about is all region, and then two of them are exclusive to Region B. And I'll note those when I get there. I know Indicator's been doing a lot of stuff that is all region based, but unfortunately, two of these films are only Region B, and one of them is a big favorite new discovery of mine. So keep that in mind and have your multi-region players ready. But let's start with a very interesting set that I really have to commend Indicator for putting out, and this is the Pemini Organization 1972 to 1974. And this is fascinating stuff. An organization that made 3 films in a short amount of time, was started basically by 2 film school students and I guess sort of an out-of-work actor, an American expat living in London that ran into one of the film students in a hamburger joint where he was working, and introduced himself as a screenwriter. The hamburger flipping, I guess pancake flipping film student, Peter Crane, introduced himself as a director, and thus eventually was born this organization. And it's fascinating stuff. And there's a lot of things to go through here that tell you the story of this organization, which I find really inspirational in a lot of ways. Especially if you're a young filmmaker getting started. It's really one of those things that just makes you go, maybe I can do this, maybe I can get lucky like these guys did. And so what we have here is lots of interviews with the 3 founding members of the Pemini Organization. We have the 3 films and, some film critic overviews and just all kinds of good stuff. A documentary that was made by Peter Crane and Nigel Hodson, who are the 2 film students that would get them into the next level of film school they needed to get to, that would sort of help them find their way. So there's all kinds of things in here that sort of form the roots of this organization and shows the filmmaking that they did, which is really impressive, I must say. So the 3 films included are a film called Hunted, which is their first film. It's only, I want to say it's only like 40 or 50 minutes. And this is a real breakthrough because it is written, of course, by Michael Sloan, and it, miraculously stars Edward Woodward and June Ritchie. And there's a great story within this disc about how Michael Sloan, who, I think it was Peter Crane who actually ran into, there's all kinds of stuff. You can't tell if it's like a print the legend situation, but it was like Peter Crane ran into Edward Woodward at an antique gun shop where they had their production offices behind in the back, and Edward Woodward was trying to buy some kind of antique gun for his collection, and he didn't end up getting what he wanted, and Peter Crane or Michael Sloan, I can't remember which, said something like, well, you didn't buy a gun today, but can I sell you a script? And he was able to convince Edward Woodward to do the script for free. And it's a really interesting, two-hander about a man who's holding a real estate agent hostage in an office and threatens to shoot people from the window. Very timely in its way. And so it's just like a two-hander. He and actress June Ritchie, who's also a seasoned British actor. And it's very good. It's very well done and ambitious. And it's interesting because there's some stories that you hear later in the disc about how Edward Woodward has often said that the reason he got The Equalizer was because the producer's wife or something liked The Wicker Man, and The Wicker Man was responsible. But there's actually an interview from Rolling Stone where at one point earlier he had mentioned how Michael Sloan, who, again, the writer of all 3 of these films and part of the Pemini Organization, and who, was able to get Woodward in this first film, would later go on to create The Equalizer. And there is a story that he said he created it with Edward Woodward in mind, and that Edward Woodward does at some point tell a story about how he got paid back for not getting paid on Hunted by getting the Equalizer, which is obviously one of the crown jewels of his career, which I think is just fascinating to see that sort of story play out, whether it's apocryphal or not. I mean, Michael Sloan is involved in the Equalizer, so you really can't see how there isn't some kind of connection there between the two of them. But anyway, so that is the first of the 3 films that we get in this set. Then we move on to one called Assassin, which stars Ian Hendry, who's a great, British character actor, and a bunch of other British actors that I recognize, but I don't know them as well. It's sort of about the staged assassination of an Air Ministry official who's suspected of leaking secrets. It's been compared to something like a Get Carter, that sort of vibe. Also really good. And it's a full feature length, 83 minutes. Very solid stuff. And so that's included. And then the third and final film that Pemini made, these are all directed by Peter Crane, all written by Michael Sloan. And that one is called Moments. It's from 1974. It's about a depressed middle-aged man contemplating suicide while visiting like a hotel resort, a seaside resort, where he, I guess, had some happier times as a young person with his parents. And he meets a young woman by chance, and it's sort of a like, does he fall for her, doesn't he kind of scenario. And they're all really, really interesting films. I had just no clue about any of these films. I had no clue about this little organization put together by like 22-year-old kids. Again, it's really inspirational stuff. And then there's a whole bunch of features for these discs that I think are fascinating. New restorations on of Hunted and Assassin from 4K scans, the only surviving film elements. These look good. Audio commentaries on Hunted and Assassin with Pemini co-founder and director Peter Crane and film historian Sam Dunn. Organizing Principles, that's Peter Crane. It's about 32 minutes. It's him being interviewed about the beginnings of the Pemini Organization and then his subsequent work in Hollywood. He would go on to work on television stuff. He and Michael Sloan did television. He has a great story about working on BJ and the Bear, and he went on to Knight Rider. He did some stuff for Glenn Larson. Fascinating career trajectory in television post this organization. And so that's 32 minutes with him, an amazing time. Michael Sloan talks about his memories of it, much shorter, more compact, only about 7 minutes, and he sort of remembers things a certain way. And then Nigel Hodson, who's the third co-founder, who sort of bowed out, I want to say, after the second feature, maybe. And they had a financial guy come in at that point. But so he's interviewed for about 30 minutes. A group of friends, June Ritchie, the actor, talks about working in Hunted for 14 minutes. Scoring with Jerry, 13 minutes. The veteran Soho musician Graham D. remembers his work with Gary Shuri on the compositions for In Search of Lebanon, which is the documentary that they made that sort of helped launch them into the next film school level that allowed them to find their way. Assassin's Creed, Ian Hendry biographer Gabriel Hirschman explores the life and career of the troubled actor. Hunted, The Lost Prologue, 2022. This is a video essay narrated by Peter Crane, reconstructing and reappraising scenes shot for the missing U.S. television version of Hunted. Restoring Hunted and Assassin, the 5-minute restoration thing. And then Moments has a new restoration of 4K scan. Audio commentary with Peter Crane and Sam Dunn. BHP interview with Wolfgang Szusicki. 1988 archival audio recording made with the part of the British Entertainment History Project, featuring the cinematographer in conversation with Bob Dunbar. And he shot Moments. And then Moments in Cannes, 8 minutes. A Present Out of the Blue, 7 minutes. Valerie Minifie fondly remembers Moments. Reality and Non-Reality, 14 minutes. Composer John Cameron replays Moments and some Moments motifs. Shooting Mr. Sue, 11 minutes. Gaffer Bill Summers recalls lighting Moments with Szusicki. And Nothing's Going to Stop Us, 2022, 15 minutes. Production designer Bruce Atkins describes dressing the sets on Pemini Films. A Family Affair assistant James Partridge remembers working with his cousin Peter Crane. And then the whole story, a 17-minute overview from Vic Pratt, film historian, that charts the whole, rise and fall of Pemini. Deleted scenes, restoring moments, In Search of Lebanon documentary, limited 80-page booklet, which... Okay, so you have your disc. You have 2 discs inside, 2 films on one and one on the other. Reversible artwork that has moments if you would rather have that as your outside. And then you have, of course, some lobby cards type artwork. The wonderful book. I mean, this is not a booklet. They do a full-on book, matte, beautiful color essays by Peter Crane, going through... It says history extracts of the film's original press materials and news articles, new writing on In Search of Lebanon, all kinds of great stuff. So really an incredible package, like, again, Criterion level package for this wonderful little film organization from 1972 to 1974 that I had no idea about before this set had come out. So hats off to Indicator for highlighting this group and these films, which are great. So that's one. Now we get into the Region B stuff, and I'll start with my favorite of the 2, and that is Murphy's War. This is a Peter Yates film from 1971, and it is pretty great, I gotta say. It was one of these things where I remembered having, this is a Paramount movie, I remembered having the DVD and going, yes, I like this movie, I've seen this movie, etc., and come to realize I don't think I'd ever watched it. I bought the DVD, and I was like, I can't wait to see it, but it's one of those things where somehow in my mind, buying it equated to seeing it. And I think I started it once and I was like, I wasn't into it, or I don't know what happened. But when I put this on, I did not remember the film. And the basic story is that you have, at the tail end of World War II, a sort of a merchant, I want to say he's a merchant marine. Peter O'Toole plays this guy Murphy, whose ship is torpedoed by a German U-boat. And we open with him basically being rescued from like some kind of a buoy in the middle of this Venezuelan river. And he's having flashbacks to the attack, which is brutal. This German U-boat not only sinks the ship, but they start shooting the people that are trying to swim away from the wreckage, the survivors. And they're shooting into the lifeboats. They're killing everybody. And it's awful. It's showing just the horrors of war, and it's an incredible mood setter for the whole beginning of the film. And so then Peter O'Toole's character Murphy survives. He's taken in by a sort of a missionary settlement headed up by this Quaker doctor played by C.N. Phillips, who was his wife at the time, through, I think, 1979. So they have a great chemistry together. She nurses him back to health. He then tries to find, apparently the pilot of the boat that he was on had a plane on it, and it was a seaplane, and the seaplane pilot also survives somehow, but is killed. And then he gets his hands on the plane, and he decides he makes it his own personal war that he's going to sink this U-boat. And he sort of gets in cahoots with this gentleman played wonderfully by Philippe Noiret, who's like an equipment manager for this oil company that has all these like different equipments like bits and bobs down near this settlement, this missionary settlement. And so he gets Philippe to sort of help him out in terms of getting this revenge on this U-boat, which he knows is just further down this Venezuelan river. Somehow the U-boat had gotten into the river because it's a very deep river. And so the film just becomes this really interesting existential examination of the pointlessness of war and revenge, and it just features really great performances from O'Toole and Noiret. They're just so perfect together. I absolutely love them together, And Sian Phillips is great as well as this doctor. And yeah, it's just one of those movies where you watch it and you go, man, that is just such a gem and so powerful that I was surprised that I had let myself think I had seen it when I hadn't seen it, I guess is my point. And so, yeah. So anyway, it's a really nice Region B locked disc, high definition remaster, looks good. It has producer Michael Dealey in conversation, which is a 42-minute archival audio interview with the producer of the film. Just sort of a career retrospective. What's interesting and what comes out in some of these interviews is that Michael Dealey, who I think produced like Blade Runner and there was a couple things mentioned here, Deer Hunter, some other things. He thought he was making like an action film, and Peter Yates, one of my favorite directors, who has done things like Breaking Away, which is one of my favorite films, but then he's in all kinds of gritty crime films like Bullet, Robbery, Friends of Eddie Coyle, more comedically The Hot Rock. Just a very varied director. He and screenwriter Sterling Silliphant were making this anti-war character piece, and that's what got made. And I think it's partially because they were on location and very remote, that the studio didn't fully understand or the producer didn't fully understand what it was going to be until it was done. And it's just a really memorable film, and I really, really dug it. Also included are interviews with Philippe Noiret on the film from 1971, an extract from a French television program of him talking about it. A Great Adventure is an interview, 31 minutes, in-depth account of the film's production with editor and assistant director John Glenn. Dougie, Chick, and Me is an 18-minute focus. It's an interview with focus puller Robin Vidgen, who recalls working with director of photography Douglas Slocum and operator Chick Watterson. Doug Slocum, of course, would do all kinds of stuff, but most notably, I think for a lot of people, would be the 3 Indiana Jones films. So same DP as that. Really great stuff. And then there is actually something called Behind the Camera, Douglas Slocum, 1999, a 13-minute archival documentary by Richard Blanchard about Dougie Slocum, which is great and has him talking about all kinds of stuff, including having to film an actual Nazi rally and how Goebbels noticed his camera was making a lot of noise. Like, he's got a great story about this Nazi rally that he was a part of, and just clearly a guy who's got tons of tales to tell, and obviously just a great seasoned cinematographer. So that's a great little bit that's also included. Something called One Man Army, which is an 18-minute appreciation by film historian Sheldon Hall, just talking about the film in general. Super 8 version. The Dougie Slocum doc, I should mention, includes interviews with Richard Attenborough, Frank Marshall, Alan Parker, and Ken Russell. There's a 36-page booklet. Again, Indicator does a wonderful job with their booklets. These are what you get with these limited editions. Will have the booklet. Their later repressings won't have this wonderful book. I mean, it's like a book. It's not a booklet, is kind of underselling it. And that includes a new essay with by Julian Wheeler, a look at the production of the film, an archival interview with Peter O'Toole, an overview of contemporary critical responses. So yeah, this is Region B locked, but well, this is the kind of movie that you get a multi-region player for. It's really great. One of my favorite discoveries so far this year. Really, really loved Murphy's War. And then lastly, we have Connecting Rooms, which is a film from 1970, and which stars Bette Davis, Michael Redgrave, Alexis Canner, and others. And it is the story of this London boarding house, basically. And we see at the beginning of the film, Michael Redgrave comes into this house. He rents a room. It is literally connecting to another room, and it has a door that won't lock and latch properly, so that if the windows in either room are opened and the wind blows, the door swings open. That room is occupied by a lonely older woman who plays cello, played by Bette Davis, and they sort of become friends. And then the other part of the story involves this Alex Canner character who's like a sleazy, he's like a songwriter, a pop songwriter, who's trying to woo this French pop singer who's in town, who's in London, and to get her to record his latest song, which will, put him on the map, really do big things for him. But he's also sort of trying to get in good graces with the Bette Davis character, who has money that he could maybe use to get a car and whatever. So he calls her princess. He comes over to her apartment. He's very nice to her, and she kind of sees through it and such. But I do love these stories where you have these characters that we see right away, and we're like, what's the story with these people? What's the deal? The Michael Redgrave character and introduces himself as a schoolmaster, and immediately the landlady says, well, but school's already started, so why are you in London if you teach? Because he says he teaches in the country, and he says, oh, well, I'm on an educational leave for research. I'm doing research for the museum or something. Right away, you're like, okay, that's a little fishy. And so we come to find out a little bit about what happened to him. There was maybe some kind of a scandal, something that cost him his job, and that sort of stuff comes out as we go through the film, and I love that stuff. And you learn more about the Bette Davis character and the Alex Cantor a little bit as well. But it's really interesting to see the three of these characters and how they play off each other, and just this period of London is interesting to me. Fascinating movie, really fascinating stuff. This one has come out already on Blu-ray from Kino Lorber in 2020. I don't remember if it had a commentary, but this has a little bit more stuff. It has a wonderful John Player lecture with Bette Davis from 1971. It's an archival audio recording of her in conversation with Joan Bakewell at London's National Film Theatre, and it's about 32 minutes. It is a career retrospective type interview. It's very nice. She's got lots of great stories, as you would imagine. Like, I can't even imagine the amount of stories that Bette Davis must have. She tells several good ones here, one about William Wyler and others. There's something called Spotlight at the Fair, which is a 19-minute 1951 documentary short. The Spotlight series, directed by Franklin Gollings, who also directed this film, which takes a look at traveling fairs across the UK. And then The Way to Wimbledon, a 1952 17-minute documentary short, also directed by Gollings and narrated by John Mills, which focuses on the 50 weeks of the year when Wimbledon is in preparation to host the tennis championships, which is also fascinating stuff. There is Bette Davis Eulogy, a transcript of a speech by Gollings, originally broadcast on Clyde Radio, Scotland, following the actor's death in 1989, and then a limited edition 36-page booklet, including new essay by Laura Main, extracts from the film's press kit, archival interviews with Bette Davis and Franklin Gollings. Again, beautiful book. And that's the inside there. So that is Connecting Rooms. It for this group of Indicator films. I look forward to talking soon, I hope, about the Humphrey Bogart collection they have coming out. It's already been out. A lot of people have it already. I'm looking forward to getting my hands on it and checking it out. And, just the wonderful work that they continue to do. They have Diary of Mad Housewife coming, Putney Swope, a version of that coming. Diary of Mad Housewife, of course, Frank Perry. The Swimmer, they're doing another edition of The Swimmer that I'm very excited to get my hands on as well. Just continuing to do great work. I love Indicator, and I do recommend them, and I do recommend having a multi-region player for anything that they put out that is not Region A, because they are doing some great work of films that may have been released in the United States in versions that are not as good as the versions they're putting out. I think theirs are usually the Cadillac version for me. So I will say, again, I highly recommend checking them out. powerhousefilms.co.uk is where you can check out everything they're doing. But I would say thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Thank you for listening, and I will talk to you very soon. Bye-bye.